Today's show is brought to you by
One of the aspects of doing What's on Tap is that oftentimes you're interviewing people that you're meeting for the first time. And that's happened to me quite a bit over the last few weeks, especially during the pandemic. But this is a pleasure for me because I get to speak with an old, not in terms of longevity, but just the fact that I've known this young lady for several years, a friend. And this is Miss Maureen Fitzpatrick. And she is the author of a book. I'm going to hold this up here. Hopefully I can. I will never be a meteorologist because I cannot do this, but this is a copy of her book, which I find still to be current. The book is called A Guide to New Jersey Craft Breweries, and this edition covers the southern part of the state. This would be Atlantic, Burlington, Camden, Cape May, Cumberland, and Gloucester counties. This is the 2019 edition, and this was supplemented by our friend John Kashu from South Jersey Beer Scene.
Yeah, John came in the last edition. First of all, he was such a great help with information over the prior 2 years, just giving me tips and information that really helped me to kind of organize everything. So he came and jumped on board the last year, but the poor guy was only there for a year because last year I decided not to, or actually this year, 2020, I decided not to keep it up. I might do it again later on, but I just became quite overwhelmed with trying to keep up with the ones that are closing and opening, and it just got to be a little bit nutty.
That is the thing. You couldn't even have put this out 10, 15 years ago because there was a dearth of breweries in the southern part of the state. And now I remember talking to several years ago to some of the brewers from central and even northern New Jersey who kind of made fun of us down here in the south because we really at the time had, I think, Flying Fish, which was in Cherry Hill, and I guess the Tun Tavern in Atlanta. He says, and that was the extent of it for the most part. But it has absolutely exploded over the last, what would you say, Maureen, 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years?
I would say so. I wrote the book. I guess the first edition came out like 3 years ago, over 3 years ago. And at the time, there actually were quite a few breweries. There were about 50 breweries that are in the book. But since then, that's even grown. Of course, some have died out since then. So it's still around 50 or a little bit over. But it was really starting to explode. And I found that many people like me didn't know where to go. We didn't know the names of them. The internet was there and people were using it, but not to the extent that they are today. Now there's a lot more organization on the sites, and the word is getting out that way. But I loved it because I could, just throw it in my car and check off the different breweries that I went to and tried. And I found that a lot of people, especially those that are not very internet savvy, they enjoyed using it that way too.
And that's in the back part of the book. You do have a checklist where you can just go right in there, put a check right in the box next to the brewery that you visited. I like the fact that you added quite extensively the concept of tour. So if you go to brewery A, well, brewery B is 5 minutes away. Check that one out. And I think that's very helpful for people and many people do this, more than I actually suspected, are doing multiple breweries within a day or two.
Yeah, and I think I organized that by county. So in each county in South Jersey, in the beginning of each chapter, each section will be a map, and then you can follow the different tours around. Again, while I'd say it's 95% accurate, there's 5% of the book now has changed. Maybe one of those breweries might be closed, or there'll be another one that is there in its place. So it's still pretty accurate, though. I mean, you can
It
still
is.
have
It
a
is.
day out and have fun going out and
Mhm.
doing those tours.
I like the fact also, one thing that you did is wherever possible, you included pictures of the owners and you attached faces to these
Mhm.
companies. And I appreciated that because occasionally with my fleeting memory, occasionally I'll go online and look at a posting by a particular brewer and who owns this again? I don't quite remember. And what I'll specifically do is pick up the book, your book, and take
Yeah.
a look at it and find who in fact the owners are. Because as you said, the players are changing constantly.
Exactly. And for the most part, I think I did that. There's a few that I wish I did that with,
Mhm.
but it was just, either the picture came out bad or they weren't there and they said, oh, just take a picture of the people behind the bar.
Mhm.
But I'd say most of them have the owners
You
there.
also
They're
add,
all listed.
yes, you do. You have recipes in there as well. Not only recipes for food, but also beer cocktails, beer shakes, if you will. So it's more than just a book about going to this particular brewery, but you've supplemented it with so many different facts.
Yeah, and I think the recipes were just kind of an additional thing. I tried to maybe kind of update it a little. It wasn't in the first edition.
Hmm.
I added this as I went along because I started experimenting with the beer recipes, and all the recipes in there are tried and true. They're very, very, very good. I enjoy them. But I think my favorite part of the book still today is that each brewery has a story, and the story was told about the brewery. So when you walk in there, you're not just getting a beer. You kind of have a feeling of who the owners are, what their story is, why they started, why or how they created this particular tap room or this location. So it kind of makes you feel a little bit at home before you even go.
It's curious you say that because I was glancing through the book last night again, and I was looking at, I just happened to find a very new brewery in the southern part of the state, one that I visited right after it opened. That's Gusto.
Oh, I love Gusto.
Me too, down in Cape May, West Cape May. And there's an interesting story behind them. I mean, Zach was in the Coast Guard for years,
Hmm.
I believe, if I remember correctly, and was a home brewer, and this was his passion. He decided to start this particular brewery. So when you talk about a story, there is a particular story behind each and every brewery.
Absolutely. And, the example of Gusto, I kind of feel like a real connection to them because when I went down there and I introduced myself, they were just so welcoming. And it's been that way ever since. I don't get down there as much as I should,
Same
honestly,
here.
because I'm busy with my work, my regular work.
Hmm.
But every time I go in there, they're still very welcoming. I feel like one thing I found about yeah, I'd say 99% of the breweries and the brewers and the owners they are the nicest, kindest, down to earth people, and they remember faces. I mean, they remember you when you go in, and I just find that Gusto is one of those that I think is at the top of the list for kindness and good people.
Isn't that funny? You say, I totally agree with you. I agree with you 100%, but you do establish a kinship with the people who are the names and the faces behind these breweries. I've gotten to know so many of these people, and I'll second your emotion, as Smokey Robinson would say. But these are some of the finest people you're ever going to meet, and I just support them 100%. I like what they're doing, and by and large, they're putting out good product, and that's the key thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. I don't think I mean, I do have some of my favorite breweries. I'm not going to tell you right now which ones they are, but I found that even in the breweries that I wouldn't put at the very top of my list, I always find a product there that I enjoy, a style of beer, or something that they've done to a beer that is that I say, oh, this is really good. I think that's what's a key to going to these breweries. A lot of people say, well, I don't know if I've heard good things about this brewery. Maybe you didn't hear good things about one particular beer, but
Mhm.
I feel like when you go to a brewery, there's a palette. It's almost like a smorgasbord. Everything on the smorgasbord you're not going to eat, but you'll say, oh, but I like the mashed potatoes, or I
There you
like,
go.
the steak. So I think each brewery, has its own acclamation, something that you can really go in and really enjoy.
I like that. That's valid. Now, oftentimes I'll recommend to people who are visiting a brewery for the first time to get a flight of 4 different beers to try. You're getting maybe a 4-ounce sample, and you very well may find something that stands out, that jumps out at you. Now, I can't say, for example, that I like every beer that every craft brewery is putting out. That would be a lie if I said that. But you'll find, as you said, certain styles that you're going to like, and even as you said, the brewer will put his or her own slant to a particular flavor. I say,
Exactly.
wow, this is unique. That you've taken a classic style and you've attached your name to this, and I really like that. And I've seen that in several cases in
Oh,
breweries, not
absolutely.
just in Southern New Jersey, but all over for that matter, which is a cool thing. Um, here's a tough question for you, and you didn't have to approach this. I don't believe, but I did. How would you go about telling someone about a beer or let's say a brewery that you just really didn't care for? And here's what I did. I'll answer my own question. If someone asked me about something, I would say, and I didn't really care for it, I would say something like it's brewed according to style, something along those lines. It falls in the range of, let's say, what a Pilsner is supposed to be. But in my mind, there was something missing, and I can't really give it more of a
Right,
positive
right.
review than that. So um, I think in your book, correct me if I'm wrong, but in your book, you do have some recommendations of beers that you particularly enjoyed, correct?
Right. And I want to point out that's just recommendations based on my own palate.
Absolutely.
So, so first of all, I think a brewery isn't just about beer. I mean, beer is, of course, the product, and that's the number one reason you want to go, right? You're going to go and you're going to have a beer. You're going to try the different styles. Everybody's going to have a different take on the different styles. I also go out because I want to relax and get away from my busy life. Part of that is what is the atmosphere? What's the tasting room?
Hmm.
So even if I think that maybe you don't have the very best beer, and though I have to say I like beer in every one of the breweries I've ever tried,
Hmm.
but even if maybe I don't like half your beers, and I love your tasting room, and you have a great relaxing atmosphere and a great welcoming spirit, I'm going to go there because to me, I think Cheers, when you go to Cheers, you saw
Yeah.
the show Cheers, it makes you feel like you're part of the family.
Hmm.
And I think, especially for a lot of, I'm speaking from a woman's point of view, a lot of women don't still know a lot about this craft beer business. And, you're trying to introduce them to what is craft beer. Well, you can introduce them first to, let's go to this really amazing tasting room. There's so many varied ones. You have the industrial look, and then you go to places where they have brick and they have fireplaces. And I don't know, you just get a feeling of warmth and community. And I really think the craft beer community, even the people that go to these breweries, are very, very kind, and you just feel welcome. So if you're not sure about the beer, go for the community, and like you said, have a flight, try different ones. And you can't rely on what I say, right? My palate might be very different from your palate.
But if again for the newbie, it's a starting point, and I think the recommendations that you put in are definitely valid and certainly needed. And I like the fact it's changing more and more now. We're seeing more and more women visiting uh, craft breweries, attending festivals. I know I talked with John Henderson from Atlantic Sea Beer and Music Festival. I think it was about a year or so ago, and I noticed he actually reported to me that over the 15 years or so in the existence of the event, that the number of women attending has continually increased, where it was
Mhm.
maybe 90% male when it first started, back around I guess what 2005, somewhere around then. It's now like 60-40, I believe he said. So that's changed quite a bit. That's
Yeah,
good.
I see a
That's
big
positive.
difference.
That's a
I
positive.
do. Yeah, and I'm part of the Summer Swelter Craft Beer Festival. I
Mhm.
help to run it and help to put it on every year. Although of course not this year.
Not this year, right?
But I did notice, and it was funny that you mentioned that. I was curious when it started about how many women would come. I was very surprised at how many women did come, even the first year.
Hmm.
And that's probably before the 40-60 or the 60-40.
Yeah,
A lot of it, I think, first of all, was the husbands dragging the wives, but I think that's what you
I
need to
agree.
do sometimes. I think that, if you have a girlfriend in your life or somebody significant in your life that is female and they haven't experienced the craft beer, let them go with you. Bring them.
Hmm.
You need to start with something maybe that's not an IPA, something that's a little bit less, hoppy, and kind of teach them from there. And it's kind of to me like an art, really. It's like art meets science. And
I like that.
if you're a creative person and you like and you're willing to try new things, you start with a little tasting.
That
And
you mentioned several really, really cool points right there, and that is that when we talk about festivals, that non-existent animal in 2020, unfortunately, uh, people really should have a game plan when they're trying some beer for the first time. And as you mentioned, if you go with something very hoppy, and I think all of our regulars on What's on Tap understand what that means. If you start with that route, you're not going to be able to go backward to something that is more malty. It's very difficult to discern the flavors and the aromas coming through on beers that are less pronounced that way. So you should probably start maybe with a wheat beer, something along those lines. Start something a little more subdued and work your way. At least that's what I do. Toward the end of the day, I'm really hitting the IPAs and the double IPAs because you can't go back after that.
It's funny you say that, though. I have a kind of a different take on that, because the first time I was introduced to craft beer, it was with an IPA, and I took a sip, and I was trying to be polite because a friend had made it. Yeah. And I took a sip, and I'm like, oh, what do? I got to get rid of this beer. It was too much. But throughout the night, I said, I'm going to be polite and just finish this beer. But just by the end of the night, I'm like, it started to grow on me. It's like you take your first taste of coffee, and you're like, oh, but then you stop drinking coffee, right? So by the end of the night, I took a second one. So my first introduction was actually to an IPA, and I was able to go back. I did.
You went hardcore. Well, that's what I was going to ask. What types of beers, what styles? I don't want to know what brands, but what styles of beer had you been drinking prior to this?
Like a Yingling lager. That was probably the strongest thing I've ever done. Okay. And in fact, Gary, I wasn't really a big beer drinker. My daughter's in the wine industry. Uh-huh. So I was more of a wine drinker. But I think the reason I enjoy beer now is because I was introduced to the craft beer. It's just so different. To me, it's not, I think to many, it's not your dad's beer, your grandpa's beer. I don't know. It's just, it's good. It's satisfying. Mm-hmm. You feel like you can drink it slow, and enjoy the flavors, and each one has a different flavor. I just love that about it.
Maureen, that is the key. I like what you said. Drink it slow. It's not something that you chug. I mean, you want to savor it. And in many cases, you've proven that in your book, in many cases, specific styles of beer are chosen based on the foods that you're eating in that particular day. You don't eat the same food every day. Why would you drink the same beverage every day? It doesn't make sense.
Right, exactly.
So that's such a valid point. A story I've told on the show several times, I'm going to repeat it again, and this probably goes back, 20 years or so ago. And I'm not going to mention the place. It is still in existence. But I walked in, and I think we were doing some filming. And the shift of workers had just ended. And I guess there were maybe 4 or 5 of the female servers were seated at the bar, only one of whom was drinking a beer. Everyone else had either a cocktail or wine. And I remember I asked one of the girls, who happened to be a former student of mine, as a matter of fact, I said, you guys just finished your work. I said, how come you're the only one drinking beer? And one of the girls looked at me and said, because that's my dad's drink. I don't want to drink what my dad is drinking. So we're backtracking, but that's changed, and as you mentioned, more and more women, thank goodness, are getting into craft beer. Also want to mention this, going back to AC Beer Fest. I did want to mention this. This is now AC Beer and Music Festival. And I think part of the reasoning why perhaps the numbers of females are increasing is because there in fact is music. And I think some of the women are into some of the bands that are appearing.
True.
It could be. But anyway.
I think that's true, because when we were organizing the Summer Swelter, a lot of the comments were by women. Oh, that's my favorite band. So that's a possibility. But beer and music go hand in hand. So what better way to introduce them to beer?
There you go. And, Summer Swelter, you know how I feel about Summer Swelter. I really love the event. I think it was so well organized. I didn't attend the first year, but I was there last year. Unfortunately, as we said, as is the case, so many events do have to be postponed until 2021. But congratulations on such a fine event that raises money in a nice way. It's going to help preserve the community, and it's just a really, really well-run event. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. I know that the team works hard. Adam Mazzola kind of heads it up. Behind the scenes is his wife, Jenny. She doesn't like to be mentioned that much, but I always have to mention her because she does so much work and she's so organized. And just a great team of people that work really well together. And I don't know, we all love beer, so I think that helps.
Well, again, it was just well run. And I guess one way you can gauge it is you talk to the vendors. You go back to the vendors and you say, what did you think? And the information I got, which was limited, just talked to a few. They said it was exceptional. They would do it again in a heartbeat. So It's
Mm-hmm.
not the easiest thing to do. The first year is definitely the toughest, as you well know.
Yes, it was very tough. But I have to say, we were so pleased with the just the response, even before we did it. Like
Mhm.
just trying to get the breweries in. So many of the breweries were so very responsive and so responsive in a positive way. We couldn't believe we were able to pull 50 breweries in the first year. Um, and I think a lot of what the credit goes to, Jenny behind the scenes, who was mapping everything out, where are we going to put everybody? We really thought about every possibility of what could go wrong and what could go right.
Mhm.
And that first year, we had so many positive, feedback from it, so much positive feedback that we said, oh boy, we must be doing something right. Now, of course, we changed venues. We went to a bigger, more comfortable venue. The first year we were on blacktop, all blacktop, and it would, you never know what it's going to be like in the summer. So that's why
Correct.
we called it the Summer Swelter. But
Mhm.
and I think even last year was even better than the first year. It was wonderful.
Well, yeah, again, I didn't attend the first year, so I don't know, but I just know that you guys did a great, great job. When you're doing an outdoor event like that, was that rain or shine? Did you have it scheduled regardless of the weather?
Yeah, rain or shine. Luckily, the second venue, which is Total Turf, right on the Pittman and Sewell border,
Hmm.
we had it indoor, outdoor.
Correct.
Indoor, half the breweries; outdoor, half the breweries. So if there was rain, people can kind of mingle inside. However, of course, the breweries had their tents, so they kept dry. But we were lucky. We were lucky. I
Hmm.
think that there's a possibility. Don't quote me on this. That if there's some major storm, we'd be able to kind of put everybody inside if we had to. Now, I don't know yet if that'll be the case in the future, but I know there's been some discussion about that.
Hmm.
So rain or shine, just keep our fingers crossed it's not a hurricane. I guess in that case, you have to decide what to do.
I do want to mention that because we're going to be candid and say that we are recording this a week after the big hurricane passed through New Jersey. How did you make it? You and I talked a little bit about that, and you might think that I'm on the Generac sales team. I'm not, but I have a home generator, which has worked wonders for me because we lost electricity for the part of that day. How did you make it out? You did lose power, correct?
Actually, twice, yes. We lost it for a full day, 24 hours, the first hurricane. And then I guess 2 days ago, there was another big thunderstorm that came
Yes.
through.
Hmm.
We lost it again.
And you lost it
Um,
again. Okay.
yeah, my problem is I live on a very forested street. So every little thing that makes a tree bend and it touches a wire and boom, and the transformer blows. And that's my theory. I don't know if that's really what happens, but
Well,
we tend to lose it a lot. So we actually went out and bought a generator. So
you
we've
did?
learned our lesson. Yes. When you buy $300 worth of food the day before a hurricane, I don't know if
Ah,
that's
yeah.
stupidity or I don't know,
No,
hopefulness. I don't know. I
that's
didn't want to lose it.
ours was that, what do you call it? Direcco, I think was the term that they used for that storm that passed through like
Oh, the direct show.
yeah,
Yeah.
7 or 8 years ago, which was in the summer,
Oh,
like around the 1st of
yes.
July, I think. And I think we were 2 days without power. And 1st of
Yeah.
July without power, it gets pretty hot.
Yeah. We
Inside
were a
your,
week without power for that one. The street line winds
oh
came
my
and
gosh.
knocked most of the town was out. I think a lot of New Jersey was for a week.
Well, you know what, you're right. And unfortunately, as we record this, there's still people who are still hoping to get their power back soon. So you have
Yes.
enough to keep their refrigerator going, freezer.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't need it now, of course, because we have the
Yeah,
electricity on,
right.
but we bought it mainly for I have an outdoor freezer and
Mhm.
the refrigerator inside.
Well, that's
I don't
good.
know. It seems like it's always filled with like meat or something, and I maybe I'm a cheapskate. I don't want to lose all that.
No, not at all. No, yeah, listen, prices at this supermarket are going up. Let's face it. So you got to protect whatever you can. So no question about that. Maureen Fitzpatrick has been our guest on What's on Tap. And again, let me try to do this right. There is her book. Hopefully we can see that real well. And again, it is called A Guide to New Jersey Craft Breweries, and you're covering the southern part of the state. This is a South Jersey edition. There wasn't a North Jersey edition, or was there?
No, I said South Jersey edition because I in my head I thought I'd have all this time to go wander up to North Jersey and do it, but then I realized that was just not going to happen.
Maureen, did you visit, I didn't ask you this, did you visit every brewery? You did visit every brewery in the book though, correct?
I did. I visited every brewery. I met most of the owners. Occasionally, I had the chance. The unlucky timing where one of just left and I had just come and but they would say, oh, just talk to the people, the brewers. So I talked to either the brewers or the owners. If it wasn't an owner, then it would be a brewer that I talked to.
Did you get feedback from any of the people within this book, from any of the companies?
Oh, I think they all enjoyed it. Most of them
should.
enjoyed it. Yeah, I didn't hear from every one of them, but most of them say that people would come in and they would have them sign, the portion of the book that was theirs. And so some of them felt like rock stars for a little bit, but
As you probably know, one of the most bizarre things, and this has happened to me many times, and I know it's happened to you, is when someone presents a copy of your book and asks you to sign it.
Yeah, you know what? That's only happened once or twice.
Okay.
It's only happened once or twice, and it was usually at a beer fest or something. But generally, people don't walk around beer fest holding a book. So
That's
so
true.
I haven't had, so that hasn't happened. I think the biggest was when I did a couple of events, when I was speaking at the events, and I had people sign it, and I thought, what are they doing? They're asking for me to sign their book. I'm just Maureen,
That's exactly what I had. They would present
Yeah.
the book, and I would look to see if there was a check on the other side, a blank check that I was signing. Why do you want my signature?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Maureen, are you still teaching?
I am, but I started I guess I'm teaching it through my own company. I own my own company, and I teach kids in China, and I write educational programs and sell them to schools in China.
Right.
So that's a little scary right now with a lot of the world relations, and then COVID shut down a lot of it. So I'm still very busy, not as busy as I could be. But when that got very busy, that's why I decided not to follow up with the next book. I just didn't have the time. Plus, of all things, my daughter just opened up a doggy daycare and grooming salon. So she's been needing my help. So I've been running up and down, helping her clean up or, answer phones or do things that she needs. So I feel like I have a million jobs and, I don't get paid for much of them.
Maureen, let's give her a little plug. Tell us about the company. What is it called?
Actually, it's on Brace Road in Cherry Hill. It's called the Posh Pooch Daycare and Salon. We do doggy daycare, and we just, redid all the floors with beautiful mats. And she's an award-winning groomer. She does a lot of show grooms and regular grooms, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And actually, we're having our grand opening next week.
Is that
celebration? Right? It's open already, but we're having the celebration. We kind of held off hoping COVID would go away, but it never did. So.
No, never did. Absolutely. Wow. Isn't that something? Boy, you're so busy. And I remember we spoke, you and I chatted, I guess it was about a year and a half ago when I had some friends who were coming over from China. You remember that?
Yes, that's right. And then the storm came.
Well, that's it. And they ended up having to, it was a freak storm, as Denver tends to get every so often in the spring months. And they ended up having to fly pretty much straight back to Shanghai. But they were supposed to be heading to Philadelphia and then New York. And I know you were going to come in and meet the people. That would have been so cool. I wish it could have happened.
Well, I hope it happens again. I mean, I hope they do come back. I actually had spoken to one of the women that you had told me coming, and we exchanged a few emails because I was supposed to actually go to China for a month after that, and I was going to meet her, but then relationships between China and U.S. kind of deteriorated, so that was canceled.
Was it Michelle? Michelle?
Yeah, she was the one who, she has a publishing company or something that was over there. So she did a lot of similar stuff that I do.
I'll tell you what, I know via online, of course, a couple of people from that area, and I'll tell you, they are the loveliest people. They really are so friendly. I was talking with one girl. She's actually a Disney employee. So dealing with an international clientele, she speaks very fluent English. Her writing is superb, and she's aware of what's going on here in the U.S. She asked about the storm because they were getting a typhoon as we were getting the hurricane, and it's the same. You don't want to generalize about any group of people, but my knowledge of the people that I've dealt with from China, they've just been absolutely fantastic. I sent, we're going to close out with this because we're just about out of time. Barbie Marshall, who you know is my friend, Chef Barbie Marshall from Hell's Kitchen, ended up going to China and met with these people. And what they did for her, they gave her rolled the red carpet out for her and treated her like a visiting dignitary. So, despite the political differences, I mean, humans are humans and we can get along.
Absolutely. And I've had several families from China. Some of my own clients had come and visited me, and I brought them downtown into my little town of Pittman, and they were just amazed and super, super kind. We can't judge
Sure.
people by the government or by what we
Totally agree.
hear. So yes, I agree.
Maureen, thank you for taking time for your day to join. It's always great to talk with you and to see you virtually today.
Yeah, good to see you, Gary. You look great.
Well, I'm hanging in there doing the best I can, even though I can't get to the gym. I'm walking up and down the block, and I probably met more neighbors in the last 10 weeks than I did in the previous 10 years.
Always a positive.
Right. Maureen Fitzpatrick, thank you again for joining us on What's on Tap.
You're welcome. Thanks,
And we'll
Gary.
see you again next time.
Bye-bye.